I tell you what, we decided, we've been here like this is about the third night, and the way everything's going, we decided we're going to come and live here, because you're so nice. I tell you what though, if we don't make it, you'll know that the police in England would rather us stay there, how's that? This is a thing by Muddy Waters. This is also on our album. Yeah. It's called You Shook Me.
Thank you for joining me, Mark McFall, for the All Things Led Zeppelin podcast, Zepfan. This is episode 11. If you want to listen to previous podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, search Led Zeppelin, search Zepfan. We will be there. If you'd like to reach out to me, it's contact@zepfan.com. Our next guest was the world's largest Led Zeppelin memorabilia dealer from 1985 to 2001. That's right, he was the Amazon of Led Zeppelin memorabilia before the internet existed. For almost 2 decades, he has been responsible for providing us fans with collectibles, ranging from the everyday collectibles to the very rare one-of-a-kind items. He also provided memorabilia to the Led Zeppelin Box Set 2 release, as well as appeared on Led Zeppelin TV special in Canada. Friends and family, we have today with us the one and only Rick Barrett. Rick, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for connecting, Mark. It's a joy to be with you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. And it's great to see you. I know we go way back, and I can't thank you enough for doing all the things you've done in the past, and I know you're still doing it.
And you as well. It's great that you continue to carry the torch so beautifully.
Right. I just can't get it out of my system. I've tried a couple times, but it's just like this want to kind of get into Zeppelin and share memorabilia or just talk about it. It's always going to be with me. And I think that's what happens after about a decade of doing it.
Yes. It's infectious, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Thank you again for joining me. I just want to say, I know you're still active on eBay and you specialize in tickets. What else is keeping you preoccupied these days?
Well, besides my eBay business, I do some writing and I have interests outside of my own memorabilia world. I'm actually active in the philatelic or stamp collecting world. I wrote my first book and it won a couple medals and was well received. And really what motivated me to go there is I've done product writing for so long that about 10 years ago, I said, I just want to write about things I want to write about. And so that led me into that world and I had a blast with it. And so I'm continuing to do more writing and articles and presentations in that arena.
Very cool. And I think that's interesting. You brought up product descriptions, because when I was doing my website and I kind of have a section that I put descriptions in there, I can never match what you did. Because I remember reading your descriptions. Look, I have a whole bunch of them here. I have all your catalogs right there.
Yes.
But I remember reading these things and you make me want to I need that now, regardless of what it was. It's like, oh, I have to have that. So you are amazing at doing that.
I just keep saying adjectives.
Right.
Make it exciting.
Right. Yeah. Well, what's the name of the book if someone wants to look it up?
Well, it's called Buffalo Cinderellas, and Cinderellas is a term that is associated with souvenir stamps. And these are collectibles, stamps that aren't good for postage, but they were primarily used to promote an event, a person, a club, something like that. And so it's basically the historical biographies of two fellas that sold souvenir stamps for a World's Fair held in Buffalo in 1901.
Oh, there you go. Very cool. Yeah, great. That's great. Well, speaking of stamps, isn't there Led Zeppelin stamps, or are they more memorabilia style stamps?
There are, and actually I'm interested in pursuing an exhibit in that arena. One of the things in the philatelic world that goes back to the 1890s is that stamp collectors, there's a lot of clubs they can be in, and they can submit frames or exhibits to stamp shows for people to enjoy when they go and attend those functions. And so I have, there's probably 50 or 60 Led Zeppelin related stamps or souvenir sheets that I have. And it would be a real treat to put them in an exhibit and, bring the two worlds together.
Exactly. That's what it's all about. So I want to dive back a little bit about you being a memorabilia dealer, right? So obviously you started off as a collector. So what prompted you what year did you say, okay, I'm going to move from collecting to being a dealer?
Well, I've been a collector since, gosh, I was 10, and I actually started in the stamp world. Then autographs, hockey autographs,
You're
because
full circle.
my grandparents lived a couple blocks from the arena in Buffalo. And I worked in a coin and stamp store as a teenager. So when I went to the University of Houston and finished my time there, I wound up wanting to interact with younger people. Stamp collectors sometimes can be filled with a lot of older folks. And although there is a vibrant young, especially since the pandemic, vibrant young collecting world there, and it's wonderful to see people getting involved in that hobby. But so I wanted to interact with younger people as a teenager. So I started selling used records first through the mail, Trouser Press magazine in 1979, and they were a wonderful outlet. Then I opened a flea market just on weekends. And one of the things in Houston was, first of all, so many people were coming to Houston for jobs in the late 70s. It was really a melting pot of people. And there were blue laws, which meant that businesses had to be closed either on a Saturday or Sunday. And most conventional businesses closed Sunday. So we cleaned up at the flea market on Sundays. And literally, it was amazing. To illustrate, I opened that business in May of 79 with like 4 or 5 crates of records. By Christmas, I had 35 crates of used records. I was hauling there every weekend, and it was tremendous. So that eventually morphed into a record store in 1981, a used record store. And, my Zeppelin interest had been a thread all through my life, even when I got to that place.
Right. Very cool. And I remember some of your very first, and I have them here, some of your very first list. It was just list, just type right in, because we didn't have desktop publishing back then. We didn't have any computers. And then you kind of branched out to this over a massive newspaper style and paste ups and stuff like that with photos. So I'm sure that helped excel selling this stuff as well. Did you have a background in the newspaper paste ups, or is that just kind of learn on the fly on how to print this stuff?
The first catalog, I remember I pasted it up, and about the next 6 or 8 maybe in at the Kinko's copy machines.
Right.
I would cut out different things. I can look back and I can see where some of the little graphics right. words I got them out of the newspaper and just pasted them on my thing. But when I went to the used record store, I just wound up stashing every Zeppelin related thing that I could find. A lot of it I wanted, but a lot of it was extras and duplicates, and I was into bootlegs by then, which was just a thrill, obviously. And
great year to be into bootlegs too. That was when they kind of took off.
Oh, that's another wonderful topic to touch on. And so I decided to put out a Zeppelin catalog in '85, just when I left the record store. And I thought, I'm going to sell all this stuff, and I hope people enjoy it, and that'll be that. Well, it didn't. That wasn't the case. So many people, I was doing record shows. I had gotten a van. I was filled that van with, 35 crates of records. I drove all over the country doing shows, 3 out of 4 weekends a month. I've been to 47 states. So I was doing record shows, and also advertising in Goldmine magazine. I loved Goldmine. That was just a weekly that was terrific, 200 pages, little bitty ads, and it was great. And so the catalog, when I put it out, which I thought, I'll sell this and we'll be done with it. So many people then started writing to me and bringing me stuff at these conventions, thinking that I was the Zeppelin collector guy. So it was like, well, I might as well buy it. I'd make an offer, and it just kind of ballooned. And, it wasn't long. And you mentioned the subsequent catalogs being more involved, and it's because of just what I accumulated. And I knew that there were other dealers or collectors that were putting out specialized catalogs for the Stones, for the Beatles. Right. I think there was a Zappa one. And I thought, nobody's doing a Zeppelin one. Why not do that? So that's kind of how it all got started.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Was it a bi-monthly, or was it a monthly, or it just got so busy you just put them out whenever you could?
No, well, I did annual catalogs, 32-page
The
catalogs.
mega ones, right? Is that
Yeah, the mega ones, the annual ones. In fact, you know who printed those? I needed a printer, and somebody suggested go to this place. They were the folks that made the inserts for the the grocery stores that you get in the mail.
You're right.
And so they're like, sure, we print up this stuff all the time. What do you want? And that turned out to be a terrific relationship for the whole time I did them. And so I did the annual ones till about 19. Well, I did them throughout, but I exclusively did the annual ones alone until maybe 1990. And then I went to bi-monthly. I got off the road and I needed an income stream. So I said, okay, I'm going to do Led Zeppelin catalogs every other month. And then I did another collector's catalog. I had a poster one, I had an autograph one, and that's what came out the other months. And I hired a lady who was a middle-aged lady, and she put all the names that I had acquired into the computer. One of the best things I did when I was on the road was have a pad of paper saying, you want to be on my mailing list, my Led Zeppelin mailing list. And I came back, after 6 years with just stacks and stacks. And so that allowed me to really not miss a beat once I went to the bi-monthly thing, because they went out to so many people.
Right. And it was such a huge source. And I remember, being a collector, getting that thing in the mail, and you would just, from Barrett or from Rick Barrett or Merit Adventures, and you rip it open and just like analyze everything. Like I said, you read the descriptions and like, okay, what am I going to get? So there's always something in there. You always had something new.
Yeah.
So let me see if I have the date right. And you could correct me if I'm wrong. So around 1993, you went from just Rick Barrett catalogs to Merit Adventure, right?
Sure.
So what prompted you to actually be incorporated? I mean, be this mammoth thing. And what exactly is Merit Adventures?
Well, it actually was 1989, and I can tell because
I'm way off.
I had two locations. I had to, two things occurred. In the late 80s, probably around 88 or 89, I bought my first fax machine. It was $600. Before that, everything was by mail. Right. If you did any catalog mail shopping, everything said, delivery of your order within 4 to 6 weeks. Now we get Amazon the next day. But 4 to 6 weeks was not uncommon. And so anyway, I thought, how can I get orders quicker? If they order once and I get it to them quicker, maybe they'll order faster. So I sprung $600. Today it'd probably be twice the equivalent for a fax machine. The first month I got orders not only from U.S. customers quickly, but I got them from overseas, Japan and Europe and whatever. I got $10,000 in order that first month. I'm like, whoa, something is happening. And so the way to get orders from overseas or by fax was to get credit cards. The only way I could get a credit card approval from a bank was to provide a business name, not Rick Barrett. And so they said, no, you can't be Rick Barrett. So I'm like, well, I got to choose something. And Merritt had been in another family business that my father and grandfather had. So I'm like, okay. And I didn't want to use just anything exclusively Zeppelin related, because I was selling so many other things.
Right, I remember autographs and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did some sports memorabilia. I did a little bit of stamps at the time. So I just added the word adventures, thinking this will cover the entire umbrella of everything. And that's as simple as it was. I needed a business name.
Well, what's funny is I do remember faxing you, and back then we didn't have faxes, so we'd have to go to the local like Kinko's or wherever to pay someone $8 to fax something to you. And I'll never forget, you gave me your personal phone number one time, and I was buying the physical graffiti display from you, and you gave me the number and like, Mark, if you ever need anything, call me. I'm like, oh, I'm in, baby, I'm in. So it's so good getting your catalog. Like, call him, Rick, save this. So yeah,
thank you so much.
One, I mean, did you think the success of this was going to take off as much? And then what was the pinnacle of the success? Because I feel with 1995, with the joining of Jimmy Page and Robert Plant and that tour, I mean, that must have just, from a collector standpoint like me, for tapes and videos, it was just crazy. It just exploded. So from your standpoint and collectibles, I mean, what was that like?
Well, I gotta say that to backtrack back into the 80s, the bootleg interest was what kind of fueled me. That shifted when the 1988 Led Zeppelin convention occurred in the Meadowlands Hilton.
Yep.
But because I knew that Atlantic Records folks would be there. So it's like, no more bootleg activity there. And so what I really started to rely on was, thank goodness for, Robert and Jimmy's solo releases. Now and Zen was 88, Outrider was 88, Manic Nirvana was 90, Fate of Nations 93, the box set was 1990.
Coverdale Page 93, those two were just great together.
That's right, Coverdale Page 92. So you had the first Zepp box set was 90, box set 2, 92, then Page and Plant 95, 96 era. So as long as there were releases, the business could stay vibrant because there was enough promo things coming out for people to have an interest in, for me to go after and try and help people and try and keep the lights on. So I guess, and then, Page and Plant lasted through till 98 or through 98. And then Jimmy and the Black Crowes was 2000. So, it was a wonderful run. The internet in the mid 90s, I got on board around 94. I connected with a terrific fellow who Bruce Deerhake.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He was my webmaster. And, I remember when I would do those annual catalogs, because I needed to change last year's material to this year's, and there was always updates every 2 months on the website. But as I did another catalog, but the annual one was quite a change for the web content. And there were times Bruce and I would just be on the phone for hours and just, well, I'd like this here. Can you tilt that here? I'd like the font bigger. And he was a terrific guy to work with.
He was the coding master too, especially for back then, for sure.
Yes. And he did search engine optimization, which helped get the word about my catalog and website. So,
So what you're saying is 95 was at the pinnacle. It just completely kept going with all the releases and everything. And just the interest was there at all times with Zeppelin.
Sure. There were a lot of fun times. The Zeppelin convention in 88, there was 92 was London celebration days. There was 90, the Zepp Fest, 2 in Cleveland,
Grand
1 in
Burgess,
Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
Those were wonderful experiences.
It
kept things alive.
I've often wondered if that would be viable to do today, just because that's one of the things I've always wanted to do as a convention. That's kind of on my bucket list. The other thing was like a Led Zeppelin book, memorabilia book. But by me doing the website, that kind of is my memorabilia book. And it's easier because I could keep updating too, because there's always going to be updates in a book and mistakes. This I could keep growing, which is cool. So I don't know if it's be viable today. It would be nice to do, but I don't know. I think that'd be really cool. There's nothing greater than hanging out with Zeppelin fans and just having a good time, and then doing the memorabilia and all that. You mentioned bootlegs, and I was going to ask you about that, and you kind of touched on it. That's why you didn't sell them, but in the early days of the Rick Barrett catalogs or Merit Adventure catalogs, you definitely offered bootlegs LPs, which I would assume would be a major driver for you. So, I mean, you stopped doing it only because, as you got bigger, Atlantic, found out about you. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I anticipated them finding out. One of the stories that I love to share, first of all, is how I got into them. If I might do that.
Please do.
77. One of my dear friends from junior high and I were roommates. I had placed an order. I saw an ad in Rolling Stone magazine, got some catalog out of their classifieds, Pied Piper Records. I got this. I ordered 4 Zeppelin bootlegs. They were $4 for singles, $8 for doubles. Most of them were the paper insert things.
Right.
And I got 4 of them in a package one night. It delivered on a Friday. I got it. We went away for the weekend. Sunday night, when we got back at 7, we were camping or something. We got back at 7. We opened the package. We stayed up all night and listened to them in order, all 4 of those. And, the proverbial, it changed my life. In a way, it really did. It was so impactful. I got Badge Holders Part 1, 77, double album, double live in Montreal, 75, BBC Sessions, and Hiawatha Express. And we went to sleep like 8 the next morning, and it was wonderful. And so I just got this hunger for them and kept pursuing all I could find. Later on, when I had the used record store, there were people that were hustling bootlegs and wanted, hey,
Sure.
you know, they would drive up with a trunk full of them and we'd buy whatever for the store. And so I always wanted the Zeppelin stuff. The Capitol Records swap meet was a wonderful source of those things. And so I started my collection. And between that time around, 77 till the summer of 90, I collected 689 different
Woo.
Zeppelin bootlegs.
Nice.
And somewhere there's an old VHS tape in the closet that's got every cover I flipped through before I
Very
sold
cool.
that massive collection. But and I offered them in the early catalogs. And two things happened. As a dealer, I was also setting up at so many shows, and I saw a lot of bootleg busts going down.
Right. That was big back then. Yep.
I really concluded that it's just a matter of time. If you're offering them, it's going to catch up. And I said, I just don't feel like the hassle of the legal system and all that and whatever. I even saw a guy that he was an oldies dealer. He had one Beatle bootleg that a friend asked him to sell one weekend. He got arrested. He was thrown in jail 2 days, and it cost him about $5,000 or $8,000 to deal with that. And I said, I don't want to do this. So then I started moving away from that. And actually, one thing that was hugely impactful was in the late 80s, around 88, 89, was CDs were out, and the first bootleg CDs came out.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that.
Of those. And that's why I sold the big LP collection in 1990, because I thought, you know, with the advent of CDs, I wonder what's going to happen to the value of boots. And of LP boots, and they probably went down in the 90s to some degree, and now they've obviously
right. Well, now vinyl's huge, and you know it just like, you know, original releases too. There's something amazing about having a piece of vinyl. It's like, you know, you could sit back and listen to it, read the liner notes, look at the pictures, you analyze every single nook and cranny of that album. CDs weren't like that. You'd have to get your glasses, even as a young person, and magnifying glass to see the lyrics. So it wasn't as exciting.
Right.
So
I'll never forget that guy, another collector dealer. He mortgaged his house to buy all 689 Zeppelin bootlegs I had. And it was a heck of it. The summer of 90, he drove down and with a truck and got them all.
Well, that's easy on you, because shipping that stuff is kind of, you're in the shipping business, but still, that's a lot to ship.
He made the money back in 3 months.
Oh, so he bought it just strictly to sell it for resale.
Pretty much, yeah.
Not a bad deal. Not a bad deal.
Yeah.
So being a dealer, did you collect one of everything? Because you had so much stuff. I mean, everything. I mean, just all the licensed products, just all the books, all the magazines, everything. So did you collect one of everything?
I did. And, you know, gosh, I hadn't even thought of that. But what comes back is that in 92, and then sometime later on, maybe 93 or 4, I set up a couple of Led Zeppelin museums at record conventions, one here in Houston, one in Pittsburgh. A promoter wanted something to promote, actually, in each instance. And so I was paid a fee to put up this massive display. And so I was pleased that I did have one of everything at the time. Later on that, you know, in the 90s, there was just so much. I mean, you mentioned the annual catalog. I think the stock that I had for that, there was about 800 items listed in those annual catalogs at any one time. What I also did, the other 5 catalogs that came out through the year, there included one-of-a-kind sections. You know, I couldn't put those one-of-a-kind sections in the annual one, because if somebody bought a rare, you know, award or a vinyl or autograph or something, then the next 11 months I would get orders for it that I'd have to return. I'd disappoint people. So those one-of-a-kind items were only listed in the other 5 catalogs, and I could keep those up to date. And but at any one time, I didn't just have the 800 things in quantity, but I also had another about 1,400 one-of-a-kind items. And so there was about 2,200 items. And I think over the course of the run, there was about 5,000 different Zeppelin pieces,
Unbelievable.
different went through my hands.
Right. I've always loved because at some point you had to get your catalog system. So I know you had the catalog, like I think, if it was a book, it was 006 or whatever it was, that you had this number, and it's like, that was a great idea to do. So
there were 35 sections. The books were 002. I remember that. I mean, 35, you're talking about books and magazines and albums and CDs and posters, press kits, autographs, keychains, stickers, T-shirts, glassware, just so many different things. And it was interesting because, there were all kinds of buyers. There were people that just wanted every postcard or,
or every button. There's something for everybody.
Yeah, it was amazing. And there were watches that came out, glassware, these were vendors. The glassware guy, he was looking, he had a glassware company, and he was looking for ways to obviously sell more product. And so he wound up buying the license through Winterland or something, good for a year. And he got to use these 5 or 6 different the 4 symbols or, the object or something like that.
Right,
and he put them on different shot glasses and tumblers and whatever.
Yeah, and they're worth a lot of money now. A lot of people like to collect that older licensed stuff, especially T-shirts. But I mean, you see shower curtains going for a lot of money. So everybody has their own niche. It's like so funny because you put something like rare, one of a kind promo item or something, it gets like 20 hits, and you put a shower curtain, there's like 1,200 hits. So, but yeah, right. It's Zeppelin, and you have to love it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, talk a little bit about. So, of course, you got magazines, books, licensed products, but you also had a lot of one-of-a-kind stuff, a lot of promo items and displays and stuff that would generally be from the record company that would go to the record store. I mean, how did you obtain these?
Well, the Atlantic people, and also, that initial flea market business in Houston, one of the great things about that was we were selling promo records. We were buying them for $1 to $2 from the mailroom guys, and that were, at CBS and MCA and Warner Brothers and Capitol and RCA, whatever. And they wanted party money. So they're selling, they're sending out what they're supposed to some degree, but bringing all the extras to us to sell. And so we'd say, and of course, I would always pitch the Warner Electra Atlantic guy, what do you got on Zeppelin? What do you got? And so we became good friends. And a lot of the material that I was able to put in the catalog came from those sources. I would also ask, do you know anybody else? The Houston branch offices wound up getting consolidated with Dallas offices later on in the early 80s. So that, took away some of those sources, but I got some national sources. There were Atlantic guys that contacted me from New York City, and I'm like, holy cow, this is the holy grail.
Right. Yeah.
These guys had access to a lot. And so I was able to get a lot from them. I got some great one-of-a-kind things from them. There were other dealers on the West Coast that would wind up with things. And, if I would get posters or something from non-Zeppelin bands, sometimes they could use them. The West Coast folks really were great at developing the collectibles for new wave acts and punk acts. And that was actually more vibrant than where we were, and especially at the beginning in the late 70s. But you take that stuff out to California and they went crazy over it. So I was able to give them that stuff and they'd give me the Zepp stuff. So it was a good, there was a lot of harmony there.
Right. Building relationships and stuff, and they're making money off of it. And it's a great way to get that stuff and offer it to us.
Sure, they're helping their customers who want that stuff, and it was good. That's also how the Atlantic people were the ones that came to me for Box Set 2. They knew I was doing this deal. They got the catalog, and they were like, "Whoa, this is pretty amazing." And they said, "Would you be willing to, provide some collectibles, some rare things for this booklet?" And I was really apprehensive at first. I thought, I don't want to send thousands of dollars off, and what happens if it gets lost? What happens if somebody wants one of these or whatever? And I had this one guy that was so great there, and he was tight and involved in the project, and said, I will make sure everything's fine. We will pay for the FedEx to pick it up and return it to you. It'll be out of your possession a week while we photograph it and whatever. And I said, okay, is there any compensation? And he said, No, not on this. And I said, okay, then I'm going to ask for two things. I'd like to get a credit in the booklet. So it says memorabilia from the Rick Barrett collection. And I said, I'd also like a letter, a signed letter on Atlantic Records stationery thanking me for use of the collection. And I got it.
Oh, very good.
They were great.
Yeah, and doing that sometimes, like, all that hard work, it's because you're kind of recognized by them, and it's put in a book and stuff. So it's really exciting. During the time of the catalog, I mean, is there anything that really stands out of you as one item that you're really proud to get?
Well,
dude, you had so much. It just blows me away. I'm looking at these catalogs, before doing this interview with you, and I'm like, the price just blows me away as far as much as they go down. But you had so much stuff. But anyway, is there anything that stood out that, like, wow, I got this. This is gonna be good. And you have to decide if you want to keep it or sell it. So.
Right. The Led Zeppelin past and present promotional interview that never was released was probably the coolest thing. I remember getting the call and they said, look, they're clearing out the Atlantic Records art department, archive. And I found 3 covers. Would you be interested? And I'm like, holy cow, would I be interested? And he said, there's no records with them. I said, I don't care.
It don't matter.
Yeah, I said, we had a good enough rapport that I said, look, I will take care of you. And when I got him, I'm like, wow. So I got him. I paid for him. He was ecstatic. I was ecstatic. And then it was a matter of marketing them. I think the first one that I put out, I offered on the cover of one of the catalogs. I know it's purple and black and white if you have them. But
I was looking at it, last night. Yeah,
and that one was sold cover only without a record. And then it wasn't long after that looking at this thing, and I remember seeing the number assigned to the project, SS-101 or something like that, and or PR, whatever, for promo. Anyway, I wound up going through what was left of my records because I sold the bootlegs, but I still had tons of, I had 20 different pressings of Now and Then or something like that, or Led Zeppelin 2 or whatever. But I went in there and there's a section at the end where I just put blank white labels, and whatever they were, I put it at the end. And I looked and I found that a record, a disc with that same PR or whatever 102 scratched into it. And I'm like, what is this? And it was the test pressing audio that pertained to the record cover. And I flipped out. I couldn't believe it. And I eventually wound up acquiring another one of those. So I was able to have the last 2 copies or covers that I had include the record. I remember I sold one to a fella in Dallas. It was a great guy, a regular customer. And then someone sold one in Japan, or bought one in Japan. And I was never able to follow up with that. But the person in Dallas, maybe 12 years ago or something, 10, 12 years ago, they said, Rick, I'm ready to move on from this. I've enjoyed it. Can you sell it for me? So I got to sell that in a second time. It was a real
we know who ended up with that. Robert Musko ended up with that bad boy. So he's very proud of that one, and I don't blame him. So I think what's wonderful about that item, I mean, you created one of the most sought after, or I've not created, but you found one of the most sought after Led Zeppelin items to date. Because this, once it gets picked up in magazines and other forms, I mean, there's such a buzz in the fact that, it's an unreleased album, and with it's pretty cool artwork on there, has a swan song. And did you buy that unseen? Like, you didn't know what it looked like? They were just saying, hey, we have this artwork. So
totally unseen. This Atlantic guy, I'd have to go back and find out what year that catalog was to really recall where it was in my timeline. But I'm sure we had been talking about, hey, I got, a bunch of Manic Nirvana posters. Can you use them? Yeah. Okay. Send me a roll of 50 or 2 rolls or whatever. Yeah. And he said, I also got this. And I'm like, okay.
Take that.
Yeah.
Take two if you have it.
Yeah, yeah. So it was really cool for that to unfold in that. One thing about that, there's always Rolling Stone or I guess Uncut or Mojo, whatever magazines put out, greatest guitarists of all time.
Yeah.
It's always the same top five in a different order and stuff. And same thing occurs sometimes. I know Record Collector out of the UK does rarest records and rarest collectible records. I've always felt that cover should be higher in there. I understand that there's a lot of doo-wop collectors from the 50s that are, these are one-of-a-kind things that are historical and whatever, and they certainly deserve their attention. But when you get more into the modern era or, 80s even, that thing is, it's tremendously scarce. There's only three.
Yeah. Well, and when you think of the band that put it out, I mean, they didn't do a lot of other things. It wasn't like they, released promotions and didn't let it out. I mean, there's not a lot of stuff by them. They're kind of cut and dry. They do their album, put it out. There's not a lot of stuff laying around. So the fact that this was actually worked on and sitting there, it's pretty impressive.
You're right. It's terrific. I can't recall. I'd have to go back in my notes, and I'm not even sure I still have them. But finding out why that was nixed. Why didn't it get put out? Jimmy and Robert and John Paul Jones had to approve every one of their releases and the artwork and the promotional aspect of things, and so somebody didn't like it, obviously.
Yeah, it's such a classic artwork too. I mean, it's beautiful. That was like the new era of Led Zeppelin, right? All of a sudden they're in this field with ties on. It's just so different from how they looked in 1969 hanging out that window. You know what I mean? So yeah,
I love it.
Different. Yeah, I agree. So let's talk a little bit about closing Merit Adventure. So you stopped in 2001. What prompted you? I mean, it's such successful business. I mean, you're great mail order, providing all of us. Like, I've always referred to you as the Amazon of Led Zeppelin because it was, you had everything and it was so cool that there's one spot for it. But what brought you to close it down?
Well, there was a couple things. First, there was a business reason. When the internet came, a lot of things really became accessible to the average guy. When my website came online in 94, 95, what did everybody do? They went to Amazon, although that might have, they bought a book at Amazon. They went to Yahoo. They might have done something with the AOL. Later on in 98, they'd go to eBay and buy something or bid on an auction. There wasn't the proliferation of sites that there is now. So you went to these, and yet communication through email certainly exploded a lot quicker than sites. And what happened was, when I think of those one-of-a-kind items that I was able to offer in those 5 catalogs throughout the year, besides the big annual catalog, I got most of that stuff either by going to record shows, people writing to me, or literally going through every page of Goldmine magazine every week with a magnifying glass.
I did the same, yeah.
Yeah, lots of us did. And I would write to overseas, and I get to the example of, I remember writing to a fella in France, and he had some rock and folk, I believe it was, and magazines, and tremendous Zeppelin cover, covers. We'd never seen them before in the States. Well, I would buy those for not very much because they were more prevalent there or common there. And I'd put them in my catalog for $75 or $100 because people never saw them and they always sold. And yet when the internet came about, well, it wasn't that long, over a number of years, that, what I was paying for them was then available to everybody. And so that really cut into the business model of being able to offer things at a premium, unless they were really rare. I did a lot of books. One thing about the catalogs through the years is everyone, of course, came together around Led Zeppelin and loved the music, right? So the music was going to sell, whichever format they wanted, whether it was LP or CD or even cassette. But besides that, everyone also wanted the information. So books sold like crazy. Most magazines sold really well. After that, some people wanted the shirt, some people wanted the button, some people wanted the poster, but not everybody. But universally, they all wanted the music and the books. And so what did Amazon do? Well, a $20 book, they were selling at $12.99. I was paying $11.99.
Exactly. Yeah. They kind of cut out everybody.
So there was no way to compete that way. So the whole business model changed. But that was one aspect about closing down Barrett Adventures. Besides that, my first marriage had just come to an end around that time. I was exhausted after working pedal to the metal for many years. I can't tell you how many of those Zeppelin catalogs, 6 a year, we pulled all-nighters on Wednesday night the last week. We had to finish things up, get those boards, these paste-up boards. You had either 16 boards or 20 or 32 go into the printer, and they had to get there Thursday morning so that we would be able to pick them up on Friday morning and ship everything out. Because if we didn't mail it out on Friday, then we would get them Monday. It would take a whole week off.
Yeah.
Because if we sent them on Friday, you all got them on Monday, and we got orders Tuesday from Europe. But otherwise, if we mailed them Monday, it was going to be a week before. So it was an income stream situation. So we had to get them done. We did a lot of all-nighters. I was getting physically burned out. And so it wasn't that long till I had some medical issues for about a year and a half. So the decision was made, and I was ready to wrap that chapter up. And made the decision in the fall of 2000. I think it was the November catalog is when I call it my swan song catalog. And we did a fantastically unbelievable liquidation sale. We sold about 80% of the things. I remember the really amazing things. I sold a physical graffiti white mat award for $5,000 to somebody. All of the objects in the box, the original objects in the box, they went. And by January of 2001 is when we closed the door and moved on.
Well, in true fashion that, once you're out, they pull you back in. I know you also had the opportunity in, I think, 2009, 2010 to sell the collection of Shelley Kane, who was, from my understanding, a Swan Song employee. So she had some amazing stuff. So could you talk about what that was like, being contacted and selling these one-of-a-kind items, stuff you would see in books, and you finally see it in person? So talk a little bit about that.
Wow. I mean, from a personal standpoint of having, I couldn't own everything, but I certainly could enjoy watching things go through my hands.
Right.
I mean, back in the 90s, I had Jimmy Page's expired American Express card. There were all sorts of things. There was a passport from somebody in there. There was a stage-worn shirt of Roberts, whatever. But, so after I closed and I eventually wound up going into business on eBay, and that's what I still do. But about once a year, I would offer some Zepp collectibles through a website I started called ZeppelinCollectibles.com. Yep. And there was a lot of things up there, but about once a year, I pull some rarities or dig some things out of this other 20% I still had, and offer those. So that's what I was doing probably from 2002 to 2008 or 9, and that's how Shelley K found me, because if you Googled Led Zeppelin collectibles, my website came up, and somehow she found me. And so she sent some pictures the first time by email, and I was blown away. This lady told me what her experience was. As a young person, she wound up working for attorney Steve Weiss in 1968, and Steve is the one that, along with Peter Grant, negotiated the unbelievable contract with Atlantic Records for Led Zeppelin 1's first album, a $200,000 advance and 90% of whatever on all concert, contracts. And so she worked and she did a lot of other worked on a lot of other artists as well. I remember there were quite some impactful names in classic rock history that Steve Weiss worked for. And so anyway, she was there all the way through Coda when they closed in 1982, and she ran the place. And I learned that the office was not this huge headquarters type thing. There was half a dozen folks there, and she was pretty much the office administrator. And so she was not a collector, but she did wind up with many things that she stashed. She obviously said, "I wish I'd have stashed more." that was cool. And the Swan Song also had Swan Song came about obviously in the mid '70s, but and that was Weiss's office was the headquarters for Swan Song in the States, and then they had their own office in London as well. In fact, she had to travel to London at one point to deliver some tapes. I remember in the conversations. It was so cool to hear her stories.
Yeah.
So anyway, she just sent these pictures and said, I have this, and I'm listening, and I'm going, holy cow, this is amazing. And I said, I'm not going to do the hard sell. I'm just going to listen. I'm going to help however I can, and be an ally however I can assist her. And I don't know what her intentions were at that point. And we wound up having a really nice exchange over several months and a good rapport. And I would say, yeah, I had one of those and I sold it for $3,000, or this I've never seen. If collectors have been asking me about this, or I've seen this in a book, but never in person. This is great. So we went that route. And eventually by the end of the year, she said, Rick, what could you do in order to help me sell these things? And so I created what I figured was a 3-point plan. You want to sell a third over about 5 months.
Right.
And we did them, I think, November, January, and March. You want to put the hardest stuff to sell first, because whatever doesn't sell will still be there in January and still be there in March. If collectors still see it, they'll grab it. So they need longer to sell. So we did it, and the best stuff came out probably but there was still great stuff in each one for sure. And so we had an arrangement, and it was just really wonderful. I feel, really honored that I could do this. I created a certificate of authenticity that she was willing to sign for each item. So to know they're from the Shelley K collection. One thing I did save that I still have here is I have a signed Swan Song business card. And
very cool. Yeah.
That one I wanted. And I said, do you have a box of these? She said, no, I have So, but Shelley's a good friend. We still touch base, and it's great. We exchange Christmas cards and emails. So.
Oh, very cool. Well, talk about some of the items that were in there, because one of the things that stand out on me is that Toby Roberts jacket. Is that thing crazy or what? Because we've seen pictures of them on the Starship with John Paul Jones and John Bonham wearing these jackets in black and white. So you didn't know what color they were. And you see this and it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, this is the jacket. I mean, it's authentic. You can't say it's, made up, someone made it. I mean, this thing is as authentic as it comes.
That's so wild you said that, because when you first asked the question, the first thing that came in my mind was the Toby jacket. And there you go. It was great. And, there were a couple other prototype jackets that didn't get made. But even the ones that did, I said, well, how many were there? And she said, I think the order was for 20.
Right.
4 band members, Peter, Steve got one. There's 6. She got one. Where the other 13 went, I don't know, but it was quite limited. So, and a thrill to see. I'd have loved to have all that stuff today.
Oh my gosh. I know. I think she had some bags in there and some other stuff. And reading Peter Grant's book, and reading about how Swan Song was, it, like you said, it doesn't seem like it was a big office. There wasn't a lot of people there. So, and again, Zeppelin being Zeppelin, they didn't really, license a lot of stuff. They weren't in the business of, we're going to make 1,000 of these and sell them. It's like, oh, let's make 20 of these, or let's make 10 of these, let's just see how it goes. And no one follows up on it, right? Let's get some samples, and they probably don't follow up. So they made 20 of these jackets, and let's move on to something else.
Yeah. It's amazing. And back then it wasn't like today. I mean, I would say that the pinnacle of record store or record company spending, like a drunken sailor for every kind of promotional anything was, late 80s. It was wonderful to be on, see around all that stuff, T-shirts, buttons, postcards, concert tickets, whatever, parties and all that. Well, they wound up scaling back a lot of that stuff. And so in the 70s, that hadn't quite occurred yet. So there wasn't all that much stuff. So, one of the things too is that I'm so fortunate is that when Shelley and I wrapped up that portion, and there's been a couple things that she found and whatever, said, I found this, can you sell it, whatever. But she turned me on to a couple other people from the office.
Cool.
I was able to meet and interact and sell items from Mitchell Fox's collection.
Yeah.
There's another fella that his name escapes me, passed away a few years ago, but he's on those Swan Song press kit releases, his name. And we connected well, and I offered his things. Shelley also had help when they had to do a mail out or something like that. These press releases, they would go to radio stations around the country, and whoever was on the list. So she would get help from family members. She turned me on to her niece at the time came in, stuffed envelopes for her, and wound up with front row tickets at Madison Square Garden for 4 shows on the 75 tour.
Not a bad place to be.
No. And so I got to connect with her. I sold her slides from the front row. She had tickets. She had unused tickets. So she had passes. Shelley was really wonderful to be able to connect me with others that had
Very
things.
cool. Yeah. Again, building those relationships. Talking about promotions and stuff in the 70s and publicity and stuff, I think the biggest push that Zeppelin did, and where most items have come out, and correct me if I'm wrong or kind of give me your opinion, is probably for the Swan Song release in 74 and 75, because they actually tried really hard, because they came out with the plaques, they came out with the desk stands, and there was kind of that big display. Sure. So they really wanted to push this record label. It kind of dawned on me as you're talking about that in the 70s. But other than that, and into the outdoor, there's not a lot of stuff that really they did.
Right. Our friend Robert has a lot of
he's a big man of the 79, 80. Yeah.
Yeah. I would also sense that by the time maybe House of the Holy came out, that they were able to finagle more of a budget from Atlantic.
Right.
And I sense that's why, because, like you say, there wasn't that much through the first 5 albums. There was a display or a mobile for House of the Holy. Of course, the blimps for 1 and 3 were great. But other than that, there wasn't much. But yeah, once Swan Song came, they wound up getting maybe, that was distributed by Warner Brothers. So maybe they kicked in when they had some other clout with them. I don't know. But
and I never counted Song Remains the Same that much, because that's more of a movie. So there's a bigger budget on promotion and stuff for movies. So there's always stuff on there. Let's dive a little bit into memorabilia. I kind of want to pick your brain on your thoughts on some memorabilia and kind of give me the backstory on it. You mentioned the object in the box, and of course, this is another highly sought after memorabilia piece.
Sure.
What is the backstory of this? Because I know there's only 1,000 of them, but I've heard so many stories in the past, and that there was a warehouse found with a bunch of them, or a lot of them broke. So what is it, or what do you know about this piece?
Probably similar to what and you hit on it. Many of them did break. I know that. So what happened is when they were created, the first one, the guys at Hypnosis, who came up with the idea and said, what do you want to do with this? And, came up with a presents cover. And so the statue was made, and they said, well, let's give these away. Let's have, a run of these done. And they splurged, and 1,000 was way more than they needed for their own promotional purposes. That's for sure. And they did not follow through with them. And they were stored in a mini warehouse in New York City. And they were sent out. I remember when I came to Houston, I wound up connecting with my brother's roommate, who had been a program director and gotten one of those. And he was a program director in Richmond, Virginia, and they sent one to the station. So I'm like, whoa, I want that thing. And I gave him $20. 5 different times, probably over 3 months, which was a lot of money for me. And I got my first real object for $100. And no box. And so anyway, what I learned later was that, Zeppelin distributed whatever they felt they could or wanted to. The rest stayed in this mini warehouse. And eventually, whether it was due to John Bonham's passing or just not being on the radar, the rent for the mini warehouse did not get paid. And so like you see today on TV, there was an auction, and whoever bought them, I don't know their story, but I do know that whoever bought them wound up getting them into the hands of a New York City dealer who was high profile and not only sold them themselves, but were looking for people like me to buy batches of, and they were selling them wholesale. And so I was buying objects in the box for $100 a piece. And I bought 20 of them at one time. I'll never forget that. I think it was a pallet showed up, and our warehouse was pretty little. It was not huge or anything, but there was a few times that pallets showed up, and that was one of them. And I remember, I wish I'd have taken a picture of it. I would love to. That in my mind would have been great. But I can see where they were, all next to these shelves of magazines, stacked 5 tall, 5, 5, 5, 5, and we'd get an order. Initially when I offered them, I sold a couple, but they didn't fly off the shelf. They were offered at $250, I think, then $299.
And back then, that was a lot of money too. In the '90s, I mean, that's a
lot of money, yeah. And even the ones that I would get in collections that came my way without a box, I would probably for 100, 150. So sealed in the box. I'll never forget, some fella over in Europe, Eastern Europe, bought one. Bless his heart, I feel so bad, but he paid the $300, and probably $50 at the time was a lot to ship it. Today it'd be $200, but customs opened it.
Oh.
And I felt so bad for him. There was no way around it, I mean, they wanted to see that it was a statue. That's what we put on the customs form, plaster statue. So, but anyway, I remember buying those, and by the end of the '90s, there were no more to be had wholesale, and they weren't like today. I mean, we had them sitting there for a couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, in that price point, you kind of wish, talk about mortgaging your house. I would like to mortgage it and get that pallet, because it's amazing how much those are going for right now. And especially sealed in the box, because, the idea of someone getting that, no one wants to not open it. I mean, because it's an object. And I think it's one of the coolest Zeppelin pieces too. Now that it's been on Pawn Stars and Brian Knapp was on the show, even people at my work know about it. It's like, hey, Mark, you got an object? Can you get me one? I'm like, yeah, get $6,000. I'll find one for you.
There were several people that bought those objects in the box from me and opened them. Yeah. I remember there were a couple were like radio or something, music industry people, and they didn't care. I didn't have one out of the box, and they said, I want one for my, coffee table. And so they'd get it and they'd open it right then, which tells me the ones in the box that are still sealed are just remarkably rare now.
Right. Well, how do you tell a difference from, because there's a lot of fake ones, how do you tell a difference from a counterfeit object to the real object?
The one thing I usually say is that once you've seen a real one, you will always know what a real one is. The reproductions were done in a semi-gloss black paint rather than the flat black. That's one of the things. Also, these, and I'm talking about the initial 80s run, and there was about 600 of those, I believe, that were made in the 80s and into the 90s. They were all individually numbered as well. So the reproductions also have a lot of imperfections. They're the slant on the originals is a real beautiful sharp slant.
Smooth.
On the repros, it's almost a bubble. The edge around the bottom of it, if you turn it upside down, the edge on the bottom is almost like they took a little nail file or something and just round it. No, the real ones are sharp corners, sharp edges. So that's one way of doing it. And
I agree with you 100%. Once you see a real one, you definitely know. Speaking of that, I actually bought my first object from you at the New Jersey convention in 1988, and I'm looking back, and we were in Dave Taylor's booth right next to it. There's those magazines, and I remember we're sitting there like, this guy is just selling this stuff like crazy. And I remember you wrapping these objects. I'm like, how do you even ship all those? Because I always loved your displays at the conventions too, because you didn't mess around. You went and got the big old 10-foot wall in the back, mounted everything. It's like Rick Barrett in the house. So yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Fun.
Yeah,
I love marketing stuff.
Yeah, and I'm thinking back, like, why, I'd be so worried now at my old age taking it on the plane and worried about it breaking, but somehow I got it home and didn't worry about it at all. But again, I was 17 at the time, so you're like, throw it in with everything else. So
We drove up to Jersey. We had
cool.
so much stuff. We drove a whole van up. Yeah,
that was a good one.
It was great. It was one of the biggest paydays of my life.
Talking about memorabilia and stuff, and then counterfeits and stuff. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the In Through the Outdoor promo poster. How could I tell a difference from the original versus reproduction?
Well, like the object, first of all, if you've seen an original, you'll probably always know. But one way is the originals are on thicker stock. So the others were on pretty flimsy.
Right.
I know who made those. And she was a lady that was in her mid-70s whose son or something had a printing company. She also was instrumental in making, I don't know whether all of them, but she did thousands of the Led Zeppelin 77 tour program. The black thing.
Yeah, those have been around for a while. Yeah.
The same person did those. And I say it, just God bless her soul, probably not around anymore. Right, and so that's okay. But the way to tell then is the Swan Song logo. If you were to take, if somebody ever, wants to know whether theirs is real or not, if they take a picture of the Swan Song logo and email it or compare it, the repro is just too fuzzy.
Yeah, because the lines are really small. So as soon as you repo that, you lose a lot of the detail.
Right. And actually the color green on the grass, the color green is a bit yellower, I believe it is on the repro. So side by side, and I wish I had, when I closed, there were several things like that. The 1980 Tour Over Europe poster, I wish I had taken pictures side by side because it would help collectors. So many of the 1980 ones come up and they are offered as real, and it's like, no, those aren't.
Well, even the Nebworth ones too. Those, I'm pretty sure those are all reproduced as well.
Right. Yeah, you got to remember that they didn't need that many. How many Tour Over Europe posters? If they did the same run, however many dates around there, the guy looking up in the sky and there's the dates around him, they didn't need but a few hundred. Yeah. And I know I sold 3,000 of those things.
Exactly, right.
And they were different sizes. They were different color red. Some had a white border. Some didn't have a white border. So, when I see them today, it's like, no, I can tell just like that, whether it's an original or not.
Well, what about the 77 tour program? Because that's always been known as being reproduced as well. I mean, can you tell the difference? Because the photos in them never really look that good. So can you tell the difference of original versus a reproduction?
The way to tell that, and Elaine Blais, Blais, in Canada, did a couple spiral bound
I remember
publications for programs, and I've got one over here, and he wound up having examples of the originals next to the repros, and right off the bat, the registration on the repro isn't as good. And I'm talking about really the blue that is inside the letters LED, ZEPPELIN.
On the cover.
Right. And the color on the originals is a lighter blue. And I remember where I got mine. I got mine from the Texas Jam. Bill Graham Productions had a booth there. And I bought one in their store for $6 and they gave me a little plastic bag. And that thing, by the time I got back to Houston, 36 hours later, it was beat up and, sweaty and whatever. But I saved that. And that's how I've been able to know there was an original.
Yeah. I've often wondered about that because I never thought the pictures were that good anyway in the original ones.
Right.
So
right.
Very odd that they would do that.
It's not that good either.
Yeah. Again, thank you for joining me, Rick, and kind of sharing your story. We'll kind of wrap it up. But before I do, on every podcast, I always ask like a kind of one-word question or one-word answer question from you. So I'll go through the list and you can kind of give me your answer on it. And of course, it's all Led Zeppelin related. Favorite Led Zeppelin LP?
LP? Physical Graffiti.
Least favorite LP?
Probably Coda.
Favorite song?
Rock and Roll.
Nice. Least favorite song?
All of My Love.
And are you a bootleg guy or an official guy?
Bootleg guy.
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
Then first bootleg you listened to?
Had to be Badge Holders Only, Part 1.
Classic. Then last bootleg you've listened to?
What's that? Johnny Kidd and the Pirates?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't check. And then favorite Led Zeppelin live year?
Live year. I love 77. It's so decadent and horrible. They were terrible on that tour, but I didn't care. That I was a kid that was partying, and it was heaven to me.
Right.
I know through listening to the earlier tours. And that's actually when I asked people, what do you collect, or what is your connection with collecting Zeppelin? Do you like early, middle, or late? And I'm definitely that 77
nice.
80 tours.
And then Robert Plant fan or Jimmy Page fan?
It depends. I'd have to go with Robert.
Okay. And then favorite solo project?
Solo? Honey Grippers.
Any final thoughts? Anything you want to kind of plug your eBay site, your give out your email address, all that good stuff? Let us have it.
Sure. Well, email, I'm always happy to help, with any questions you might have, or I don't sell much Led Zeppelin memorabilia anymore, but I do get a lot of emails asking questions about things, or sometimes I'm able to direct people. My email is Rick Barrett Mail, and that's RICK, and then BARRETTMAIL, Rick Barrett Mail at Comcast.net. And my eBay store is called Rick's Auctions, and I still sell memorabilia. My main focus is on offering old concert tickets and stubs, and I have about 7,000 of them right now, including a few Zepp and maybe a couple dozen Page and Plant related. And I love connecting with fans around live music and old concerts and bootlegs, and this is just a great way for me to combine two passions, which I really love. So it's great to connect with Zeppelin fans, and especially those from the past who might have enjoyed getting my catalogs.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Rick. Thanks for joining me. You enjoy your day, okay?
Thanks so much, Mark. It's great to spend time with you.
Always great. Yeah. Have a good one. Bye.
All right.
Well, there you have it. That was Rick Barrett, the one and only Rick Barrett. Thanks again, Rick. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and kind of get your insight on collecting and being a dealer in the wonderful time from 1985 to 2001. Until then, happy holidays. Listen to some Zeppelin. Rock on.